Welcome to Bay Area Psychology. Tonight we touch on a topic which affects us all, managing change. While there's a Chinese view of change as opportunity, many of us resist change. We resist its inevitability, fighting to hold on to the known, even when we know it's not our heart's desire. Whether we fight change or welcome it, it always comes. I know that there have been times in my life where the surety of change provided the hope I needed to work through a difficult situation. More often than not, it can be our ally. Tonight we are joined by Santa Cruz therapist Selma Suzuki, who is a licensed marriage and family counselor, who is willing to come over the hill to share her insights into this challenging topic. Welcome, Selma.
I went the distance.
You did, and I appreciate you making that drive. I know that managing change and moving through change is an issue that you particularly enjoy working with, and I know you work through transition. And what's intriguing to you about that particular topic?
Well, for one thing, it never ends. The process it's a cycle. It goes round and round, and I have found, from my experience anyway, that what we learn to do with the small changes in our lives, we can apply to the large ones. And I like to share that message because people tend to forget that. And I think it's a process. As long as we live, we're going to go through the change, but how we relate to it can stay the same.
Okay, so that's that is an important message, which is that we're not talking about just giant changes like marriage or career change, but maybe just ordinary decisions to do our life maybe a little differently in another area.
Right. I found that people can get a flat tire or break a glass and respond the same way as if they had cancer diagnosis.
That's very true.
No, people just have that automatic reflex reaction, and just noticing that can help make us function better in a process. Yeah.
So part of it is, I'm getting a hint here about proportion.
Yes.
So part of what you do with people is help to take a look at some perspective. Okay, let's take a look at a graphic that I prepared just as an overview, and we'll take a look at the first three parts of this process. The first process, and it looks like it's fairly small print, but I'll read it, is the life event itself. We have something happen. Then we have denial. In other words, we minimize how it affects me. We look at how good things were. It won't happen to me. We have a shock, a numbness, and a desire to kind of do in our lives what we were always doing, carry on as usual. And then this third stage we'll cover at this point is resistance, which is an anger, loss and hurt, stubbornness, blaming, complaining, perhaps even getting ill. So let's back up and take a look at life events. And what kind of life events do you think often impact people?
Like I said, it could be large or small. It could be the flat tire. It could be the favorite broken glass, or the last glass of the set that you broke. It could be a big change, moving to a new location. It could be a child that has the reaction. It can be the adult. Changing family members, blended family, a car accident, driving over the hill. I think about those things.
Yes.
Those are the big kinds of changes. And what I want to point out again is it doesn't matter if it's big or small. The principles, the skills that we use can apply to both sides.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's say we have, well, what you're saying is also sometimes something can be neutral, too.
What do you mean?
In other words, the event itself is simply an event, like breaking a glass. Often it's the interpretation we give to it.
You know what I'd say? Yeah, ultimately we can get to that point where it seems neutral, but what I have found is we have these reflex reactions after years and years. We just have these habitual responses. And so it's important to see how we react when we break a glass. Most likely that's how we'll react in a car accident too.
Okay.
And knowing that cycle, that pattern, and then moving beyond it is the goal that I would have with people.
Okay.
Yeah.
So something happens.
Yeah.
What about this denial, this idea of minimizing or thinking, well, this really can't be happening?
That's one way people react. They can also go the other way with the, oh my God, kind of reaction, like, what? No perspective again. Both of them are extremes in perspective change. Nothing's wrong or everything's wrong. Everything stops. So for example, the how good things were, the it won't happen to me, those are attitudes. And so like dominoes, certain attitudes will come, and it's important to notice what they are.
Okay.
So for somebody who minimizes, it might be there's nothing wrong, everything's fine.
Okay.
For somebody who maximizes And they're both forms of denial, because what we're denying is that there's no memory of past successes dealing with change. So that's how I see them, as both denial.
That's interesting. So the idea that seeing something as traumatic is also denial in the sense too. I would imagine that you're not dealing with reality.
That's right. You're dealing with a fantasy
Okay.
of how this picture looks.
Okay.
I
What's the
can't deal
advantage
with
to
it.
that? What's the advantage to maximizing?
Well, it's a pattern, again, and it can be harmful, but it can also serve. And it serves because it's familiar. I've been there before. A lot of people get a lot of strokes for complaining.
That's true.
Oh my God, does that get your attention?
That's true.
Yeah, it does. People can develop movies off of that, right, and make $1-million books off of that.
Good
So there
point.
is a payoff to getting overwhelmed. And then there's a nice pattern. Well, if this is too big for me, I can't go to work.
Okay. So it's sort of, well, this is so large, I don't want to take responsibility.
And so we've got a nice pattern of actions and thoughts that have served, and they buffer between the real event. You know, it's something familiar, and it separates me from the real event, and the fact that I really don't know how to deal with it other than this way.
Well, it also reminds me of clients I know who maybe grew up in large families where there was a lot of chaos anyway. So really the only way to get attention sometimes was to make sure that what you had to say was larger than life.
And then you in the same family might have had the minimizer who got attention by being so perfect and good, and
Sure,
nothing's
being so
wrong.
cooperative.
And I'm not going to show feelings because look what happened to little Joey over there, you know? So all of these are, you're hitting the nail on the head. Patterns learned in childhood to survive in a family, to function in a family. They worked well in that context, but we find that we get trapped in them, and we apply it in our work, family, and in all of our affairs. And when we go through change, it's as if we've fallen through the crack. You know, this crack opens up. We're using old patterns that maybe worked in our family, but suddenly they don't necessarily apply.
Okay.
Yeah.
And it's scary to find that your usual coping methods aren't working.
Right.
You know, I'm sure.
Right.
And in fact, it looks like one of the feelings we might have was the next one, which is resistance. You know, the anger, the loss and hurt, stubbornness, blaming, sort of maybe going back to that sort of triggered emotion that we experience when something
Actually,
happens.
what it goes back to, for me, this is my perspective, is attitudes.
Okay.
And you know, when you make a campfire, you have to blow on the fire. Now, the fire in itself would be the emotions, and the attitudes are what we're fanning the fire with.
Ah.
So there's certain attitudes that we've established as children. And really, one of the main ones is, I want things the way I want them, and it's not happening. Look at any 2-year-old and who doesn't get candy at the cashier
That's true.
point. Ah, kick and scream and go into resistance. I want things my way. That attitude that I can't have things the way I want it flames that feeling of anger.
Okay.
Or terror. Oh my God, I'll never get what I want.
That's right. If I don't get it, it's either now or never.
So it's really important to look at the attitudes, I think, that come up as part of the resistance. Often they come up and then the feelings come.
Wouldn't another form of this, it strikes me, be something like learned helplessness too? Another reaction is, well, of course I didn't get what I want. I never get what I want.
There
Why
you go.
bother?
And all those are attitudes.
All those are attitudes.
Right, and the attitudes have power, and we feel them in our bodies. And then there's this give up. I don't care. Which leads to another pattern, addictive patterns.
Okay.
Okay, so we've got a pattern of thinking, and the consequence of that is a pattern of behaving. Well, you know, one way to look at for example, the learned helplessness. Well, it's not going to work. It never works. I'm a failure. I hate myself. What the hell? I'm going to have the drink.
Okay.
Or, to hell with this, the stubbornness. I'm going to have my drink. I'm going to eat the vanilla fudge sundae. I'm going to work, and I don't want you to stop me. I'm going to watch Star Trek, and don't you interrupt.
Okay.
You know? So again, resistance. Now, the anger, the blaming, the complaining and complaining are all forms of anger. That's one form of resistance. And the attitudes there are, I wanted it this way, and I didn't get it, and I'm angry. and I'm going to complain about it, I'm going to be sarcastic about it, I'm going to blame other people, I'm going to blame the government.
Yes.
Okay.
Well, ultimately, we could always blame
I'm
it on
going
the
to blame
government.
myself, and then we have shame, and that's anger turned on ourselves.
But there's also something very bonding about complaining. I mean, I know I've certainly worked in working environments, which will remain nameless, where
the
probably the
lounge.
greatest
Yeah.
bond that we had was that anger that we used
That's
in the
right.
form of complaining.
And this is a very important addictive pattern. The way we use anger inappropriately. No offense.
Yeah.
We all do it. I do it too. It's a very empowering feeling. And you know, in that life event, our first response is we feel small, terrified. Oh my God. Very vulnerable, very powerless. And so the second line of defense is get angry.
Because immediately we feel bigger.
I feel big, I feel strong. And if I can complain about it, everybody's going to listen, and I get attention, and I'll even get support. Or if I go bad on myself and say I'm hopeless and helpless and all that, that's a familiar pattern too. So whether we use anger to make ourselves big or small, it becomes an addictive pattern of thinking and feeling and acting. So anger is one form of resistance, yeah. And getting sick, you know, that could be part of it too. And literally, I don't think that, you know, some people might do that on purpose, but I think if you're angry a lot of the time and frightened a lot of the time because you don't know how to handle change, like it says here, is exhausting and stressful to the body. It's like having one foot on the accelerator, one foot on the brake. God, how are you going to live like that?
That's a great analogy.
Yeah.
So then the body takes the toll for that.
That's right.
Which is maybe
So-
increased flu, maybe
Right. Low immune
immune
system.
system, maybe even developing ultimately something like lupus or one of the autoimmune deficiency.
That I don't know, but I do know that just think of anybody. Think of yourself by 5 o'clock, you know? Again, back to my premise that how we handle our daily change situations is going to be just magnified, and we're going to do the same thing in the big situations. If we're constantly not knowing how to handle change in our day, we get exhausted. When we're exhausted, we feel tired, and it's easy to get angry, and there's consequences to that. We harm ourselves and others.
Okay.
We get sick. You know, if you're tired all the time and running on empty, where does that take us? Colds.
That's right.
And headaches. Yeah.
I'm going to need to interrupt
Stop.
you. Just for a moment. We're going to take a 30-second break.
Okay.
Please stay with us. When we return, we'll learn more tips for managing change sanely.